The message hit my phone before I had even finished greeting all of our wedding guests. "You're fired. Think of it as my wedding present." For a second, I honestly believed I had misread it. I stood frozen in the church foyer, still wearing my wedding dress, my bouquet clutched so tightly that a few white petals slipped onto the polished marble floor. Only minutes earlier, I had promised forever to the man I loved. Laughter echoed from the reception hall, photographers were calling our names, and family members were waiting to celebrate. Yet all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat. The sender's name confirmed what I already feared. Tate Lawson. My supervisor. The owner's son. The man who had spent the last 3 months making every workday feel like a battle. I slowly handed my phone to my husband. "Karen, look." His eyes scanned the screen. I expected anger. I expected him to tell me to call the office immediately or storm into action. Instead, he looked at me with surprising calm. He gently folded my fingers around the phone. "Not today," he whispered. "What do you mean, not today?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I just lost my job." "You lost nothing that truly belongs to you." I stared at him. "Trust me," he said with a small smile. "Put the phone away. Today is ours." There was something in his expression that stopped me from arguing. It wasn't denial. It wasn't ignorance. It was certainty. Against every instinct telling me to fight back, I slipped my phone into my maid of honor's purse and walked beside my husband into the reception hall. Rose petals filled the air. Music began to play. Everyone smiled. I smiled too. But deep inside, questions refused to leave me alone. Why today? Why would Tate wait until my wedding? And why did Karen seem almost prepared? Hours passed. We greeted relatives, cut the cake, posed for endless photographs, and finally stepped onto the dance floor for our first dance as husband and wife. Halfway through the song, my maid of honor hurried toward us, her face unusually pale. "Waverly, your phone. What happened? It hasn't stopped ringing." She placed it in my hand. The screen lit up with a number that made my stomach tighten. Over 100 missed calls. My coworkers. Department managers. Several clients. Then one name repeated again and again. Gregory Lawson. Founder of Crescent Design Studio. Tate's father. I stepped away from the dance floor and played the newest voicemail. "Waverly, this is Gregory. Please call me immediately." His normally confident voice sounded strained. "Tate had absolutely no authority to terminate your employment." I blinked. The next voicemail started automatically. "We're locked out of your project management system." Another. "The downtown redevelopment deadline is Monday." Another. "No one knows how your workflow operates." By the final message, Gregory no longer sounded like the powerful businessman everyone admired. He sounded desperate. "Our biggest clients are threatening to leave. We need your help." I slowly lowered the phone. An unexpected feeling settled inside me. Not fear. Not anger. Control. For 2 years, I had designed Crescent's entire project management infrastructure. Every blueprint. Every revision. Every client request. Every engineering approval. Every permit. Everything flowed through a system I had personally built from the ground up. Again and again, I had asked Tate for permission to train the rest of the staff. Again and again, he rejected the idea. Waste of company time. Too expensive. We don't need backups. Now there were no backups. Karen quietly found me sitting alone in the bridal suite. He closed the door behind him before speaking. "I think it's time I tell you something." I looked up. "You know I work in the city's permit office." I nodded. For the past several months, I've been reviewing Crescent's submissions. His expression turned serious. Some of the documents Tate personally approved weren't the same documents that engineering originally signed. My heartbeat quickened. What are you saying? He altered structural plans after approval. I felt the color drain from my face. He removed safety features. My voice barely came out. That's illegal. Karen nodded once. It gets worse. He substituted cheaper materials on several major projects before submitting them for permits. I stared at him, unable to process what I was hearing. This isn't just about office politics anymore. No, Karen replied quietly. This is about public safety. Suddenly everything made sense. His calm. His confidence. His refusal to let me panic after receiving the firing message. He already knew the company was standing on unstable ground. And by firing me, Tate hadn't destroyed my career. He had removed me from the disaster before it exploded. Karen reached for my hand. Don't answer Gregory. I looked at him. Not tonight. What if they need me? They didn't think they needed you this morning. The room fell silent. Outside, our guests laughed as music echoed through the reception. Inside, I realized my wedding day wasn't becoming the worst day of my professional life. It was becoming the day everything was about to change forever. The reception carried on as if nothing had happened. Guests laughed over dinner, children chased each other across the dance floor, and my relatives kept pulling Karen and me into photos. To everyone else, it was a perfect wedding. Only the two of us knew a storm was gathering beyond those walls. I slipped my phone back into my purse and ignored every incoming call. One voicemail after another appeared on the screen. Then another. Then another. By the time the final guest wished us goodbye, the missed call counter had climbed even higher. Karen noticed me staring at the screen. Still thinking about answering? I keep wondering if Gregory really didn't know. He took my hand as we walked toward the car waiting outside. Whether he knew or not doesn't change what happened. His words stayed with me. The next morning we boarded our flight to Belize for our honeymoon. I had imagined spending the week answering work emails between sightseeing trips. Instead, I had no job. Oddly enough, that thought no longer frightened me. As the plane lifted above the clouds, I looked out the window and told myself something I hadn't believed in years. Maybe this ending was actually the beginning of something better. The first 2 days were peaceful. White sand stretched for miles. The ocean shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. For the first time in months, I wasn't checking project deadlines or rushing to solve someone else's crisis. Then my phone vibrated again. Gregory Lawson. Voicemail. Waverly, please call me. Delete. An hour later. Another voicemail. Our Westside client is threatening legal action. Delete. That evening. Another. We've tried rebuilding your project database, but nothing matches. Every department is operating blind. Delete. Karen watched quietly from the balcony of our hotel room. You haven't listened to the last few. I don't need to. Curious? Very. So why ignore them? I looked out toward the ocean. Because if I answer now, they'll think desperation earns forgiveness. Karen smiled. They're learning the value of what they threw away. By the third day, Gregory had changed his strategy. Instead of apologizing, he started negotiating. His newest voicemail made me laugh in disbelief. Waverly, come back and I'll triple your salary. Triple. Only days earlier, his own son had thrown me away with a single text message. Now they wanted me back at any cost. I deleted it. The following morning another message appeared. We'll make you a partner. I stared at the screen. Partnership. The same company that had allowed Tate to humiliate me on my wedding day suddenly wanted to hand me ownership. Not because they respected me. Because they needed me. There was a huge difference. Karen sat beside me on the beach, sipping fresh coconut water. You've already made your decision, haven't you? I have. You aren't going back. Never. He nodded as though he'd known the answer all along. Good. I raised an eyebrow. You sound relieved. I am. Why? Because I have a better idea. Now he had my full attention. You've spent 2 years building systems that made an architecture firm more efficient. So? The city doesn't have anyone like you. I frowned. What do you mean? They need someone who understands both private construction and government approvals. His voice grew more animated. Someone who can design procedures that prevent exactly the kind of shortcuts Tate was making. The idea settled into my mind almost instantly. I wasn't limited to one company. Everything I knew. Every lesson. Every mistake I'd witnessed. Could become the foundation of something entirely my own. Karen continued. You've always been solving other people's problems. What if you built a business where your expertise belongs to you instead? I looked toward the waves rolling onto the shore. For the first time since receiving that cruel text message, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about freedom. By the time our honeymoon ended, my notebook was overflowing with plans. Business structure. Potential clients. Service packages. Consulting fees. Compliance systems. Training programs. Every hour of the flight home was spent refining the idea. 3 days after we landed, I officially registered my company. Precision Protocol Consulting. The paperwork wasn't even complete before my phone rang. Gregory Lawson. This time. I answered. Waverly, he said, sounding almost breathless. Thank God. I remained silent. Our biggest projects are collapsing. Clients are leaving. Please, tell me what it'll take to bring you back. I glanced through the window of my new office. A small room. One desk. One laptop. One dream. Then I smiled. I'm sorry, Gregory. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I don't work for Crescent anymore. A long silence followed. Then he spoke carefully. Then we'll hire your company. I leaned back in my chair. You'll need to do much better than that. Before Gregory could answer, another realization crossed my mind. He wasn't calling because he believed in me. He was calling because, without me, his entire empire was beginning to fall apart. Gregory didn't speak for several seconds. When he finally did, the confidence that had made him one of the city's most respected business owners was gone. Waverly, whatever your consulting fee is, we'll pay it. I rested my elbows on my desk and looked at the framed business license hanging on the wall. Only a few weeks earlier, I had been an employee waiting for instructions. Now the owner of Crescent Design Studio was asking for mine. My schedule is already filling up, I replied calmly. We'll work around it. My first client isn't a private company. There was a brief pause. It's the city planning department. The silence that followed lasted even longer. Gregory understood exactly what that meant. If my firm was helping the city strengthen approval procedures, every project submitted by Crescent, including those Tate had altered, would inevitably receive closer scrutiny. Waverly, Gregory said quietly, please don't punish the entire company because of my son's mistakes. This isn't punishment. It's accountability. He sighed. I failed you. You did. I trusted Tate when I shouldn't have. And I warned him repeatedly. I know. His voice sounded older than I remembered. I should have listened. I let those words settle before answering. Some decisions can't be undone. No, Gregory admitted. They can't. We ended the call without reaching an agreement. For the first time in years, I felt no obligation to rescue someone else's crisis. That chapter of my life was over. My work with the city began the following Monday. Walking into the planning department felt completely different from entering Crescent. No office politics. No inflated egos. Only one shared goal. Protect the public. I spent my first week reviewing hundreds of building submissions from dozens of construction firms. Patterns quickly began to emerge. Some companies submitted flawless documentation. Others, not so much. One name appeared again and again. Crescent Design Studio. Specifically, files approved under Tate Lawson. I compared the engineering records against the final permit submissions. Within minutes, discrepancies started appearing. Wall dimensions didn't match. Steel reinforcement specifications had been changed. Emergency access routes had quietly disappeared from revised drawings. The deeper I looked, the worse it became. I immediately documented every inconsistency and forwarded the report to the city's compliance division. An official investigation was launched before the end of the week. Karen met me for lunch that Friday. "You've been busy." "You could say that." He smiled. "They've already started requesting additional documentation." I expected they would. "And Tate?" I took a sip of my coffee. "He has no idea what's coming." Karen studied me carefully. "You don't sound angry." "I'm not." "What are you?" I thought about it for a moment. "Disappointed. I spent years helping build something valuable. They chose arrogance over experience." He nodded. "And now reality is correcting the mistake." 3 weeks later, the investigation became public. Every major news outlet in the city covered the story. Major downtown project suspended pending safety review. Construction stopped immediately. Inspectors flooded the site. Clients demanded explanations. Investors began asking questions no one at Crescent could answer. Then my phone rang again. "Gregory." "Waverly." His voice cracked. "The board has suspended Tate." I remained silent. "They're reviewing every project he touched." "I'm sorry to hear that." "No, you're not." He wasn't accusing me. He was simply stating a fact. "No," I answered honestly. "I'm sorry your company is suffering." "I'm not sorry that the truth came out." Another long silence followed. Finally Gregory asked, "Did Karen know?" "He noticed irregularities months ago. And he reported them?" "He followed the law." Gregory exhaled slowly. "I should have done the same." Within another month, the investigation reached its conclusion. Tate wasn't simply dismissed. His professional license was suspended pending disciplinary review. Several regulatory agencies opened independent investigations into his conduct. The downtown redevelopment contract was removed from Crescent entirely. The financial losses were staggering. Millions of dollars disappeared almost overnight. Employees who had spent years building the firm's reputation watched clients leave one after another. Ironically, the only department that continued growing was mine. Cities from neighboring counties contacted Precision Protocol Consulting after hearing about our new verification system. They wanted help preventing the exact kind of failures that had nearly slipped through unnoticed. I hired my first employee. Then my second. Within weeks, my tiny office was too small. Karen walked through the door one evening carrying 2 coffees. "I thought you'd still be here." "I've been interviewing applicants." He looked around the crowded office. "Losing your job doesn't seem to have slowed you down." I laughed. "No. It accelerated everything." He handed me the coffee. "Funny how life works." "It is." He looked at me for a moment before asking, "Do you ever regret ignoring Gregory's calls during our honeymoon?" I smiled. If I'd answered then, I would probably still be fixing someone else's company. Instead, I had finally built my own future. But just when it felt like the past had finally stayed behind me, my receptionist walked into my office holding an elegant cream-colored envelope. It was hand-delivered. No return address. I opened it slowly. The signature at the bottom made me stop breathing. Gregory Lawson. And after reading the first paragraph, I realized this wasn't another apology. I convinced myself the only way I'd ever earned that respect was by tearing you down. I didn't interrupt. I canceled your training sessions because I was afraid people would realize how much the company depended on you. He let out a slow breath. And firing you on your wedding day. His voice cracked. Was the worst decision I've ever made. The room became silent again. Gregory slid a thick folder across the table. We've spent the last year changing everything. I opened it. Inside were updated workflow diagrams, compliance procedures, ethics policies, mandatory staff training programs, and independent review systems. Every weakness that had once existed inside Crescent had been addressed. It was impressive. Far more impressive than I expected. We're asking you to evaluate everything, Gregory said. If you find flaws, we'll fix them. No arguments. No excuses. Before I could respond, Tate reached into his briefcase and placed a small envelope on the table. I have something else. I looked at him cautiously. Inside was a certified check. The amount made my eyebrows rise. It matched the total cost of my wedding almost exactly. Every decoration. Every flower. Every reservation. Everything. I looked back at him. Why? He managed a weak smile. You once received a message calling you're firing a wedding gift. He took a slow breath. This was supposed to replace that memory. I gently placed the check back inside the envelope. You really think money fixes what happened? No. He answered immediately. I know it doesn't. Then why bring it? Because I wanted to return something I had no right to steal. Before I could answer, he reached into his bag once more. This time he placed a small USB drive beside the envelope. I found your original project management system. I stared at it. Every hour I'd poured into building that platform. Every late night. Every innovation. It was all sitting inside that tiny device. We rebuilt our own version, Gregory explained. But the original belongs to you. I held the drive in my hand. Oddly enough, I didn't feel angry anymore. What I felt was distance. That chapter of my life no longer owned me. I carefully set the USB drive beside the folder. If I agree to review your systems, there will be conditions. Gregory leaned forward immediately. Anything. My consulting fee is triple what you originally offered. Done. Payment up front. Agreed. My team receives unrestricted access to every department. Absolutely. I turned toward Tate. And you? He straightened instinctively. You'll complete every training program my company creates. His expression didn't change. You'll learn documentation. He nodded. You'll learn compliance. Yes. You'll learn project management from the ground up. I will. You'll attend every ethics seminar. I understand. And you'll never supervise another employee until my team certifies you're qualified. For the first time, Gregory looked surprised. Tate didn't. I accept. There wasn't even a hint of resistance. I studied him carefully. Months earlier, he would have argued. Demanded authority. Blamed someone else. Now. He simply accepted responsibility. That mattered more than any apology. I closed the folder. I'll review everything over the next week. Gregory finally relaxed. Thank you. I stood. As I reached the door, Gregory spoke again. Waverly. I looked back. I know I can't undo the past. No. You can't. But I hope one day you'll believe this company deserves another chance. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked around the conference room. The old Crescent had rewarded ego. The new Crescent appeared determined to reward accountability. Whether that change would last, only time could answer. I'll judge you by what you do next. Then I walked out. Outside, I took a deep breath of fresh air. For the first time since my wedding day, I felt completely free. The past no longer controlled me. But before I even reached my car, my phone buzzed with a breaking news notification. The construction company that had replaced Crescent on the downtown redevelopment project was now under investigation for bribery, corruption, and serious safety violations. I stopped walking. If those allegations proved true, the city would need a new contractor immediately. And suddenly, Gregory's invitation no longer looked like a simple apology. It looked like preparation for something much bigger. The news stayed on my mind all night. If Crescent's replacement contractor was removed from the downtown redevelopment project, the city would be forced to start over. Millions of dollars, thousands of jobs, and years of planning were hanging by a thread. The next morning, I called Gregory. "I've reviewed your proposal," I said. "I'm listening," he replied carefully. "I'm not interested in becoming an employee again." "I understand. But I am willing to become a partner." There was complete silence. "A partner?" he repeated. "My company will oversee project management, compliance, and quality verification. Crescent will handle design and construction. Every major decision will require approval from both sides." Gregory didn't answer immediately. "You'd still remain completely independent?" "Exactly. I'll never put myself in a position where one person's ego can destroy my career again." After a long pause, he finally spoke. "I'll present it to the board today. You have 24 hours. The next evening, my phone rang. "The board unanimously approved your proposal." Just 2 weeks later, the city officially removed the competing contractor after investigators confirmed serious ethical violations. Our joint proposal was selected because it combined experienced architectural design with an independent compliance system that guaranteed transparency from start to finish. Construction resumed. This time every blueprint, every engineering revision, and every material approval passed through precision protocol consulting before reaching the job site. The project quickly became an example of how public and private organizations could work together without compromising safety. As for Tate, he started over from the bottom. Instead of sitting in executive meetings, he spent his days learning documentation, site inspections, and regulatory procedures. Every morning my team assigned him new training. Every evening he submitted reports for review. Months later, during an early site inspection, I found him carefully comparing structural drawings with the approved engineering plans. "You know someone else could do that," I said. He looked up and smiled slightly. "I know. Then why are you here so early?" "Because shortcuts are what destroyed my career." He paused before continuing. "I never want to make that mistake again." For the first time, I believed him. People often think redemption happens with one apology. It doesn't. It happens through hundreds of small decisions made consistently over time. Tate wasn't trying to erase his past anymore. He was earning a different future. As the months passed, the downtown redevelopment project moved ahead of schedule. My consulting firm expanded from a single office to a growing team serving multiple cities. Karen received a promotion for his integrity and commitment to public safety. Together, we finally bought our first home, a place we renovated room by room, just as we had rebuilt our lives one step at a time. Exactly 1 year after my wedding, my phone vibrated. A message from Tate. "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to earn back respect. I won't waste it." I stared at the screen for several seconds before typing a reply. "Respect isn't given. It's built. Keep building." I hit send and smiled. Then I realized something. Exactly 1 year earlier, that same phone had displayed a very different message. "You're fired. Consider it my wedding gift." Back then, I believed my world had fallen apart. In reality, it had been opening a door I never would have walked through on my own. If Tate had never fired me, I never would have started my own company. I never would have transformed an entire industry's compliance standards. I never would have discovered what I was truly capable of becoming. Life has a strange way of disguising opportunities as disasters. Sometimes the people who try hardest to break you end up pushing you toward your greatest success. Looking across the completed downtown skyline one evening, Karen slipped his hand into mine. "Any regrets?" he asked. I smiled as the sunset reflected across the buildings we'd helped bring to life. "Only one." "What is it?" "I wish I'd realized sooner that my future was never in someone else's hands." He kissed my forehead. "And now?" "Now I know the greatest revenge isn't destroying the people who underestimated you. It's building a life so successful that their betrayal becomes nothing more than the first chapter of your success story." With that, we walked forward together, not looking back at the pain that started the journey, but toward the future we had built, one honest decision at a time. The end.